What's up, everybody?
Hey.
Welcome to the Game School Online show. I guess that's what we call it.
We've changed the whole studio. We're now at the Game School Online head location.
Yes. Of course, I am Brandon Pham, and
Larry
this
Charles.
is Larry Charles. And thank you for joining us every Thursday, usually at 11 a.m., but we're making special accommodations to our special guest, Kalen Chock, that we're going to bring on real soon. I believe everyone is hearing us. Yes, just making sure. And Kalen Chock is, of course, an old friend of ours.
Yeah, we went to college with him.
Yeah, been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah.
Amazing artist, amazing teacher, amazing professor.
Talented artist, hardworking artist, very humble and real.
Like,
that's a word I use to describe Kalen. He's real. He's very
and before
real.
we bring him on, we do have on mute. Let's kind of talk about games going on a bit. The last week and a half, Larry and I have been running the design and environment workshop. Has been proven
good,
really good. Finally, great to put a face on everyone that we've been talking to for years and years, and this is happening every week. So obviously, if you want to become a member, go over to gameschoolonline.com. You'll be able to find that and kind of sit down with us and have a conversation. And we're making that as kind of like our way to share the individual ways to give an insight on behind what game we're working on. We're not ready to reveal it to the public, but if you want a sneak peek, it's a great way to sit down with us in those workshops that isn't being recorded, by the way, for our own safety, but also in the discrepancy of our team. We are starting to talk about it. So that's a great way to kind of connect with us. And of course, by becoming a member, you will get this. If not, if you're seeing this, you're either seeing us live or seeing it a week later. And by becoming a member, you can see it right away as soon as we go live. So
speaking of going live, let's check in on our boy Kalen. See if we can get the ceremony, the seminar started. I said ceremony.
Yeah. Do you hear us, Kalen?
Yes, I hear you. Do you hear me?
Right. Yeah, we do. Kalen, we got you.
Are we going to see your face today, Kalen, or is it just pure art form right now?
Is the
we don't
Discord,
have to.
Do I have... Sure. I mean, is it thing on? Oh, it's not on. That's why. My bad.
It's all right.
Let us see. Is it on now? Is it working now? Or
your face?
Well, you have to invite him to the chat.
Oh, his chat is already in there. That's how we're hearing him.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
There we go.
There
Oh,
we
my
go.
God. The goodness is there.
All right, let's share that handsomeness with the world.
All right, sharing the handsomeness.
Okay. I was dancing that track y'all made. I was dancing the entire time.
I saw your Photoshop screen bouncing around and zooming in, and Brandon was like, "What's going on?" I was if I know Kalen, I was like, "He's dancing." That's what it is.
Oh yeah, totally. Techno show going on here. It was amazing.
Dude, fresh cut too, man. I'm glad we're streaming today. Came prepared.
Oh yeah, I happened to get a little bit of a beard trim the other day. Who knew?
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kalen. And we did our best to introduce you. But if you want to add on to that resume a bit before we get started, to tell our viewers and I guess watchers out there, what's up? The floor is yours.
I mean, I think you guys did a pretty good job. Like I said, my name is Kalen Chock. It's nice to meet everyone here in this live stream. I've been a concept artist for probably like 10 years now. I've known Brandon and Larry for a long time through school and through other business endeavors and things of that nature. Currently working at the mobile studio in the Bay Area. And just doing my things. I teach when I can. I travel as well to help with workshops all around the world when I can. I'm just very blessed to be in this industry and doing what I love to do. And life is good. I really cannot complain. I'm very blessed. Got married last year. Bought a house in the Bay Area. That's it. That is life. And now I get to draw. So I can't complain, man. Life is good. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, thank you so much, dude. We do have your screen up. Whenever you're ready to rock and roll, go.
I like this drawing. It's amazing. This is a picture of myself. So just before I begin, I mean, the idea here is that you wanted me to kind of maybe talk about just kind of reverse engineering, kind of looking at some some more finished pieces and talking about the process. Is that kind of what you're kind of looking for?
Dude.
I mean, we kind of briefly talked about it.
This is your ride. We're just hanging on. So anywhere you want to take us.
Okay, sounds good. So for people that don't know, I usually major my bread and butter is environment art. So I'll kind of walk you through some stuff here that I've done for previous companies and things of that nature. Let's just see what I have here, and we'll talk about just some images that I've done in the past and kind of how I like to break stuff down. This was for a cinematic that I did for another game company last year. And we had these kind of interesting paintings that had to kind of parallax. And I guess we'll kind of break stuff down here. And so usually when I do anything, I think people kind of look at finished pieces and they always think, hey, you know, I have to kind of just do it, you know, one shot, you know, everything rendered and painted.
Do you hear me?
So don't work on? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So if you're screen sharing right now, we can't see your screen. We have Discord up.
Hold on.
Is it loading?
Let me try that one more time.
There we go. We got it now. We're good.
Sorry.
Now you see what we see.
My drawing.
Oh, there's your drawing.
Yeah. That's my drawing of me saying what up of myself. I'm missing the hat though. Anyways. So these are some images that I've done in the past. For cinematic purposes, kind of doing character reveals for the game that I was working on at the time. And when we see stuff like this, people usually ask me kind of like how I go about it, like how do I go into the rendering, what kind of stuff. I'm a very big believer that like the battle is won when it comes to environment art or when it comes to doing drawings. The battle is won very, very early on. And so a lot of it to me is getting the graphical read or getting the overall look and feel of the shot very early on. And so most of the battle is actually done here. And if we wait for that to kind of click over, you can see these terrible drawings that I've done. But a lot of stuff that I do is really kind of focused in this beginning part right here. And you can actually kind of see like the idea right there. If I kind of click between both, you can see what I was thinking of. Once I kind of get to this point, it's really about kind of figuring out the graphical read, making sure that the proportions feel right. So though this is all rendered right here in this shot in particular, if I begin to kind of turn on all these different layers here, and all I'm doing, I'm just masking it out with a flat color. Most of the time, the things that I do, this is where I spend most of my time. If I make it black and white, you can kind of see like the masking that happens there. And so a lot of times when I'm actually painting in these kind of colors because I really want to see like how things are kind of flowing from one kind of mass shape to the other. And of course, when we do this, we're always thinking about our perspective and we're always thinking about, you know, how things are kind of flowing in terms of making things feel like it has depth. But once I kind of get this phase down right here, this is where I usually begin to kind of do my rendering stage, and I'll kind of I'll see actually how far, how in depth I had these layers actually. Because I'm not sure. I haven't opened this file in a long time, so I'm curious on like how much I actually preserved layers. I'm a big fan of layering just because in traditional painting, you don't get that kind of stuff. So you normally, if you can have layers saved, then it's good because it allows you to work on things non-destructively, and then you can kind of change things if you need. So a good example would be this piece right here. This would be kind of bare bones, and you can kind of see the big strokes and things that are happening there. But then as I begin to slowly kind of add little bits of texture, you can kind of see it. It's a little bit hard, but it's very, very subtle. And then little hints of lighting to kind of make the piece give the idea that there's something outside. So giving that little bit of lighting hint right there. All these things are really, really important. Why? Is because, you know, my director, Josh, at the time, he would say, hey, you know what? I want that to be blue. Well, I go, okay, well, now I can actually handle that. I can go in there. I can make that blue. I can make it green, right? I have a lot more like options with it in terms of where it's kind of like non-destructive. So I can make those changes fairly easy without having to do anything. And so that's where a lot of this stuff kind of becomes like super, super helpful here. So let me make sure, am I being, someone messaging me? No, we're good. Okay. So I hear that Discord thing all the time. And so that's kind of how a piece begins to kind of work out. Another example of that would be the same thing here. And this is the same piece right here. So obviously this looks like really crazy and looks like it has a lot of stuff going on. But if I begin to kind of peel the layers back here one by one, and I'll do that. And again, this is where I kind of focus on, which is getting that graphical read in the very, very beginning. If I begin to kind of peel stuff little by little away, you'll begin to kind of see each piece being painted. And so I think a lot of times people, especially students, they get caught up in the overall details and they want to kind of paint all these kind of cool detailed things that I have going on here without kind of really looking at the bigger picture. They're kind of focused, they're not seeing the overall whole and how things read. And so that's kind of where usually for me as a teacher, I really emphasize on is creating strong graphical reads whenever you can. So this is kind of the final shot. And everything here is actually separated to make it a little bit easier. So even this detail right here is kind of separated. You can kind of see it. Everything can kind of be moved. And that makes it a little bit easier for me just because if I need to kind of have things parallax, if I need to have things kind of move over or kind of just shift or kind of work on proportions, that's a really big thing for me. It's a very, very valuable tool for me to have layers, because normally when you paint traditionally, we don't really have those options available. Once you put something down, you're kind of married to it and you can't really change things, or you can, but it will cost you a lot in terms of you having to kind of take a lot of time. Where digital painting, we have this kind of this tool that allows us to kind of use the undo button and make changes here and there, and it can happen in the instance, which keeps the production, which keeps me painting more rapidly. So anytime I can keep moving fast and not have to worry about small things of like painting behind something or editing something out, that's always good in my favor, because then it allows me to kind of focus on the just the flow of painting. And then another one we could do as well is I had to do some storyboards one time for a character, and ironically the art director Josh at the time liked it so much, he said, you know what, why don't we use this as a promo? Why don't we paint this up a little bit? And then that was the final shot right there. And let me just turn everything on because I had some lighting, all that kind of stuff in there. But as you can see, as I kind of go through, like everything's on its own layer, everything has its own texture, everything is made. Very, very, everything that I put in here has a very kind of meticulous kind of thought process to it. So that way I'm not kind of wasting time and I'm being very efficient with my painting. And so that's kind of the final shot of how it came out. But as much as like the boss and the people like the painting that I did here, to me, what's important was this. If this wasn't here first, then we would never have gotten to this point right here. And so that's what I mean is that I feel like the battle is very, very won when you're doing paintings. They're won here in terms of doing these kind of rough drawings. You can see the second image that I did right there. Again, keeping things very, very graphic. This is where the ideas kind of spark. Not necessarily, right here. I don't just kind of wake up and just start doing that. There are some artists who are like that. I'm just not one of them. Maybe someday, but for the most part, most of my daily grind is kind of in these two areas right here, figuring out these spots and then slowly but surely, kind of step by step, layering things together until I get kind of a finished product. And so these are some works that like I just particularly enjoy, and I like doing them. And that's kind of my thought process and kind of how I like to break stuff down. I guess I can leave it to you guys if you have any more questions, that I can do some more demonstrations, stuff like that. But are there any are the people going to be asking questions live, Brandon and Larry, or is this just me talking for an hour and you guys just laughing at me behind the camera? Or what is the format here? I can't hear you guys actually if you are asking questions. Let me see. No, mute, unmute. There. Oh, are you guys there? Am I dead? Is everyone? They die? Oh no. Well, okay. In the meantime, I will let me talk about some things that I like to think about in terms of painting until I can hear their voices, because I don't hear. Wait, Brandon, can you hear me? Is that? I don't know. Let's see here. I guess not. I think they. All right, we'll just keep going. If you do have questions, I'm not sure how you guys would be able to ask them. Let me see real quickly. Can you hear me? And we'll talk about some things that I'm a very big proponent of, which is kind of additive and subtractive painting, and always kind of painting in something in a XYZ coordinate system. So before we do that, I just want to make sure that my voice is being heard correctly. And there you go. And everything is good. Cool. So let's see here. Cool. So a quick little thing here. My brush, if you see it rotating like this all the time, I do have something called a art pen, and it's different from a Wacom pen. It's a little more expensive, but what it does is that as I'm rolling this through my fingers, it allows, as I'm rolling the pen through my fingers, as you can see that, what happens is the brush actually rotates. And so that's actually like really, really imperative for me because it allows me to get like certain angles as I'm sculpting any kind of shape, whether it's a tree or a rock or a building. It becomes very, very valuable. So it's something very, really cool. Let's see. Here. Let's go back. Okay. So that's a really, really important thing. You can find this on like, I'm surprised Wacom needs to give me like a kickback because I always like rep this pen. This pen's kind of a game changer for me just because again, that right there makes it really, really easy. And then the reason why I like this too is just because this brush in particular has a harder edge and then kind of a softer end right there. So that makes it really easy. So I'm a very big proponent on like only using one brush if I have to. So it allows me to kind of like use one brush and then I can actually kind of blend things out by turning the brush sideways. So you can actually get these kind of interesting bits of like texture and stuff with only one brush, just because if you turn it to the side, it's very, very soft. You turn it vertical, it's a very, very hard edge. So stuff like that, it's completely random why I'm talking about it, but just so you know, if you're ever wondering like how I'm doing that, it's mostly a tool thing. It isn't really anything crazy, by the way. Okay, cool. Let us see here. So additive and subtractive painting. You'll probably hear me talk about this a lot. No one's ever had me before, but I think of art mathematically for the most part. And so let's do additive, subtractive. And I hate math, by the way, but I think this is definitely something that, of me trying to all this time like quantify like how I like to think about things, this is probably the best way I like to think about it. So when we're talking about overall shapes and things of that nature, I think people tend to think of painting as a very kind of additive manner, meaning that we kind of push stuff around and we just add paint, and then we want to kind of add more detail, we just keep adding more paint, just like that, right? That's a very, very simple way of thinking about it. I think when you get to a higher level or you want to start thinking about shapes a little bit differently, I think about shapes as a subtractive manner as well, thinking about, well, then how do I erase? And so I'm a very big proponent as well as keeping the brush very, very big. So as I'm painting, I try to use the brush as big as possible. That comes from a traditional background here. And so you want to keep the brush as big as possible. And so my goal is to, how do I get a complex shape with the fewest amount of strokes? And so a lot of people, when they paint, they usually kind of take their brush very, very small, and they'll do the same thing, but they'll kind of do that, right? And they'll kind of make the same shape. And though it's the same exact thing, the problem is that they're still painting in a very additive manner. And so my thing that I'm a big proponent of is painting in a very subtractive manner, which means that putting in a very, very big shape and then using negative space to then carve out a shape like so. And so that's a very big thing for me. Now we talk about divisive painting. Well, divisive painting is the same thing, is that we're now breaking it into a shape just like that. So now we're talking about painting in a very divisive manner. So to me, when I'm painting, I always want to think about, am I painting in an additive manner, or am I painting in a subtractive manner? And if I can kind of break those things down, then it makes it like easier for me to kind of keep track of what I'm doing. So I think a lot of times when people are painting, they're just kind of going all over the place. They're kind of just, they're kind of sampling and they're kind of just doing their own thing and here and there and whatnot. And then next thing you know, things get like very, very muddy. And so that can be kind of risky for the most part. So that's why I kind of go against that if at all possible. So I always want to kind of think about which kind of space am I operating in. So if you want to do one, we can do one together, I suppose. I still can't hear Larry and them. So I hope that they are funneling questions. I guess I can just go to the Twitch, huh? You know what? Let me just do that. I think they died somewhere, but it's all good. Or maybe this is two of them. Maybe no one's here. Okay. All right. So if I'm painting, let's just kind of do an example here. And we won't use any layers, but if I'm trying to think of like, an interesting shape, I'll just lay some kind of groundwork down here. All right, this could be some kind of ground plane or something. If I'm using a big shape, right now I'm painting in a very additive manner and still kind of in an additive manner as we go right now. And so again, not that attractive, but now I can begin to kind of paint it in a very subtractive manner, which now means I'm kind of shifting my my brain a little bit here. And I'm saying, you know what, let's go to subtractive. And now, because I don't like that shape right there, I'm now going back into an additive manner. And so just little by little, because I'm kind of breaking this down, which again, additive and subtractive just means that we're painting and we're erasing. As I kind of go back and forth, we can see the shape kind of slowly begin to kind of take place. And hopefully it begins to kind of look visually interesting. And so a good question here is the Brambot is asking, do you do smaller strokes for later details? Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of like, I don't want to use a smaller brush unless I really, really have to. Why? Because for me, it's kind of dangerous just because, again, looking back at some of these paintings here, right, it's very easy to get stuck in all of that, but I want to see the bigger picture as a whole. And so I try to go as far as I can before I have to kind of like paint something in. Before I have to paint in a certain kind of detail, I will go as like humanly possible before I go, hey, you know what? Now I have to now use a smaller brush and I'll have to zoom in. Notice here I haven't really zoomed in that much, and that's kind of on purpose as well. And let me merge these two down. I think I can paint on one layer. I'm feeling rather confident. And so again, now we're kind of balancing different lighter values here too. So there's a light value and a dark value there kind of going on as well. But the cool thing about this brush is that now, as I'm kind of making these strokes, there's these little softer things here because of the way that I'm kind of pushing the brush there. And so again, just very, very easily, we are now kind of, again, painting in a very additive, and this is kind of subtractive. But the only reason why it's subtractive is because the value is different. And so now we're kind of going back and forth. Again, I'm still not happy about the top of the shape right now. So maybe here I might kind of, change the angle a little bit here and there as I'm kind of, breaking stuff down like that. And so I'm finding these little details. And so the cool thing about that is that I made a small detail right there. Like normally you would think that this detail right here was caused by a small brush because the piece of the little cut line is very, very small. When in actuality, it was still the same brush, just that I painted inside of it and I drew through the form and I drew on it. So you can actually create smaller details fairly easy with the big brush. It's just mostly, again, how can you kind of rotate that brush to kind of get the angle that you want. So even here, as I'm kind of painting additively, I'm still getting these smaller details in there, but I'm still kind of retaining the same brush size, which I think is really important because that saves you time technically, because you're not having to kind of constantly, resize the brush whenever you need. So again, that's kind of like my thought process there, is that when I'm painting in a very additive manner, I have to kind of think about, well, then what's the goal here? What am I trying to go for? And so as I begin to kind of paint something like that, you can see the level of flow that's kind of happening in there as we're kind of doing it. So we've talked about, again, kind of adding detail. We talked about how the battle is won, additive, subtractive painting. The next thing that's kind of important, I think, is just kind of how you combine all that together as a whole. A lot of that is just perspective and just knowing how to paint in an XYZ coordinate system. So if we were to kind of take a step back here, perspective is probably one of the biggest principles that can really help your piece like look good. And if we were to break this down, let's see here. I'm gonna make a very, very small grid. Nothing too crazy, because I don't want to make this too bland. But it is important to understand that when you're painting, you want to think of it that you're painting it in like a 3D perspective, almost like you're painting in like a 3D software. So I try to always mimic that idea, even though we're in a 2D painting software. I try to make sure that as I'm painting, that everything feels like it has some form of like dimensionality to it. So let me just break this down. So I'm just eyeballing here. So no promises that this is going to be amazingly perfect, but there we go. Let's see here. Let's see. Hold on a second. One cool thing. All right, so let's get back here. So I have my little grid, and I'll just kind of lower the opacity on this so we don't really think about it. But what I have there is just an XYZ coordinate system. So all that really means is that there is a X, which is the blue. Actually, well, blue is always Z depth if I think about it in terms of like a 3D program. X usually comes across us, comes across our eye, right? If we're the viewer, it comes across our eye. And then Z is usually yellow or green. I think it's green, or Y. And Y just means that it's going up. It's going up and down. So that is our XYZ coordinate system. And so when I am painting anything, whether it's a building, whether it's rock or a tree, I'm always trying to think of how I can break that stuff down to its simplest of shapes. Let me move. There you go. Look. I don't know why this matters to me, but I'm like, this should match like the perspective there. Anyway, so X, Y, Z, and I'll actually write it down too, just for the sake of argument. So that will be Z. And for my 3D guys, like you obviously probably know this, but for someone that may not, it's definitely good to kind of keep that in there. And so, yeah, I want to make sure that as I'm painting that it's always going in a direction. And so as I begin painting anything, the same thing kind of applies, that everything can kind of fit into my terrible box. Actually, let me redraw that. That's actually unacceptable on so many levels. There you go. That's less acceptable. But anyways, box, cylinder, cone, and sphere, just like that. So as I'm kind of drawing, I always want to think about how do those things fit in those shapes. And if I can do that, then I think I'm in a pretty good spot. So let me kind of see. Let me think of something here. All right, so let's see here. If I'm making a big shape, and I'll use this as I'll use this in probably black or like a lighter, darker color, like so. So you guys can see that, right? It's like boom, boom. Cool. Feel free to join the conversation. Yeah, feel free to join the conversation. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just talking to myself.
We just, out of respect, like once you get going, we mute.
Watch.
So then
I'll take a picture of it.
That you guys kind of
okay. All right, no worries.
Stuff, like I feel like I'm just talking to myself. Like if you have questions, especially if you're someone's a level designer, right, an environment artist, it's always good to hear different perspective questions. Like as I'm kind of doing.
Fair enough. We'll join you then. Yeah, we're looking at you from our studio screen.
A studio screen? Oh, wow. You have like a robot, man. That's crazy. It's crazy. I thought you guys left. I'm like, did they just go to lunch right now?
No. We're still here. We just had our mics muted. Sorry.
Gotcha. All right, I was making sure. Anyway, so as I'm painting, I'm always trying to think about which direction is the paint kind of going. So everything kind of has a rhythm. Everything kind of has like a motion. So as I'm kind of making a stroke here, I think about which direction is it going. So in this one right here, I'm going in the X direction, right? I'm going across. And this one, I'm going in the Y direction. And so I think when people paint, they tend to like not think about that kind of stuff, and they just kind of just paint on the digital canvas, and they're not really thinking about anything. But I think it's important that as you're painting, you always want your shapes to kind of go in some kind of direction, just because it will give your painting a little bit more volume to it. So here, as I'm still kind of going in a Y direction, I can shoot across in the X direction right here. And then maybe I can paint in a very negative manner, right? Painting very subtractively to kind of carve out that Z direction right there, and then go in a Y direction right there. Go back to a subtractive way of painting, and then boom, there we go, something like that. So little by little, we're kind of adding form with each of our strokes. And again, the art pen makes that like really, really helpful, just because I can easily kind of shift. I can just rotate my brush really, really easily without having to do much, like right there. Right? I can easily kind of move that around, and I can get the angle that I want without having to really like work for it. And so that can be a very, very valuable tool, like so. And so we are live, right? Or no, we're live, but are there people like watching live?
Yeah, okay. We have Twitch people watching right now. And we'll forward the question. I got a question. All right. There's rumors that the Bay Area is very expensive, Kalen. Right? You just bought a house there, so you're safe. What is your opinion on people wanting to move up there for jobs? As a student, as a professional, do you advise it or not?
I would say, there's nothing wrong with wanting to move somewhere. This could imply anywhere. This could be you wanting to move to LA, you wanting to move to like New York. You can move anywhere for whatever job prospects you want. I just think that if you're going to do that, you just need to be serious about it. I've seen people that, they want to move somewhere because, it seems fun, right? They may be from a small town, or they may be like, hey, if I have to go here in order to get a job, that's totally fine. But I would even argue, and you can even probably attest to this, you and Larry, that our industry is very mobile, that you actually don't have to move if your work is good enough in order to kind of get work. Unless you're looking for like actual studio stuff, like, yeah, but even then, I feel like more and more people and more companies are allowing people to be more mobile, and as long as you have email and like internet access to talk to someone, I feel like they don't care. You know what I mean? Like, they'll be like, all right, do what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot more and a lot more outsource. Yeah, 100%. I can agree.
Yeah, a lot more outsourced, because if I don't have to, if all I have to then worry about is like, just talking to you a couple times a week, I don't have to like I don't have to buy your computer. I don't have to, do all those things. It actually ends up being like a much easier time than me having to kind of, hire someone, bring them in, feed them, all that kind of stuff, like, pay for a bigger studio space, when in actuality you could just work from home and, do good work. And I've done a pretty long career of doing that, just because it was the easier thing to do than to want to move towards like another country or another state. So granted, there is things from in-house experience, like that's totally true. Though, to be fair, all this stuff is a little bit easier to move in the Bay when your wife is a scientist. So if I can give you any advice, just marry a doctor, and that will probably solve most of your problems. Because if you marry a doctor, they're pretty or a scientist, they're pretty well off financially for the most part. So that's my true advice right there. Marry a doctor, or what does Larry? What does your girl do? I forget what your girl does. She's like an art director.
Art director, yeah.
Yeah, marry an art director, man. That's the goal. That's the best advice I can give you. This entire thing is get a doctor, get a scientist, keep the bills low. That's what it's about.
I'm gonna update Kia on my plans.
Yeah, tell Kia you gotta step that penguin game up.
On 10, 12 years, at least a side chick, please.
Yeah. Hey man, hey, everyone's got to eat. It's a cold world out here. Yeah.
That's what I said.
It's a cold world. Yeah, the industry is definitely a rough place, but also there's a lot of opportunity, as you already know as well. Yeah. I mean, you guys have been doing it for so long.
Mm-hmm. Well, the concept art world is always interesting to me because you guys have the ability. You probably started that whole freelance remote working for all of us. Now that you've been in the industry for a long time, do you see yourselves often like competing against international concept artists? It being so similar, yeah, it's so workplace friendly.
Yes and no. I mean, just in general, the competition is definitely crazy. Like I get some students in my classes sometimes that I'm kind of question like why they're there. I'm like, why are you here? Like,
I need to stop teaching you.
Like, you should get a job. Yeah, like you should just get a job right now. But some of them, they don't have the confidence quite yet, or they're just, they're a little bit green, and like they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready yet. They don't want to mess up, and that's totally fine. Like that makes sense. So I think in terms of a freelance, yes, probably international kids can probably take a lot of your work from you. And rightfully so, just because they're cheaper, and like if I can hire someone from China that's going to do it like for half the price, why would I want to like pay someone? You know what I mean? The only time where it's not in your advantage is being there in person. So that's where networking really comes into play, in my opinion, because if someone from international wants to get a job, right, then they have to get a work visa, that they get all these things, and more times than not, those people aren't going to like want to go through all that issues to like get a work visa, get permits, go through all international stuff, when they can just hire someone that's just as good in the United States. So from international people, I always tell them like you just have to be so good that someone is willing to like wait like 6 months and spend like thousands of dollars and like fly you out here and move you out here and get you settled in, just to work for your company. And so that's when like your work has to be worth like the pain. Like it really has to be worth like someone putting in that much time and effort, because it does take a lot in order for someone to invest in you, to want to say, hey, I'm gonna sit here and spend all this money to get you out here, because we believe that the work that you do is so like game changing that I can make our project and make whatever we're doing that much better. So that's where you just have to just make sure your work is really, really good. And in today's society, there's no reason why that can't be the case anyway. I think there's just so many schools and tutorials and just options just in general, that there's no reason why you can't be like a baller like in a couple of years, if not sooner. I mean, I've seen some kids just like ball out recently that are just like really, really good, and all they did was just grind. So that's my answer to that one.
Yeah, I feel like if the Art Institute has shown anything, it's that like given 3 years time and dedication, you can go in knowing zero, come out being entry level ready.
Yeah, it's really about like the work that you put in. The big, like, you can go to any school, but like I feel like I've been teaching for a good while now, I can say. And I think the biggest factor that I see in terms of whether someone's going to be successful or not is always just if they're hardworking, like if they're not lazy. Like if they're lazy, then I know that like, because getting a job is fine, but keeping a job is another situation, because you're always going to have to learn new techniques. There's always going to be something you have to like, some new program, some new technique. I'm getting into VR, I'm getting more into 3D. Like you have to kind of always like be up on your craft, because there's always going to be some new kid that's going to like possibly take your job. So, I mean, with that said, the biggest thing is the ability to adapt. I think the ability to adapt and hardworking, because I know that if you're a hard worker, I know eventually you can probably get to a point where your work is no longer like bad and it becomes like employable, where someone looks at your work and they go, yeah, I can give you money for that. Like, I'll give you money. Like, I'll give you like a 6-figure salary and give you all these things. Like, if you do that stuff for me. And that just takes time, but you just need to be in a place where you can allow yourself to grow and not have to worry about, do I need to get a job right now? Do I have loans? Do I have personal things I got to worry about? And that's not the case for everybody, right? Some people have kids right now. Some people have student loans. People have full-time jobs. Some people don't have that kind of time to get there. So whatever time you do have, it's important that you don't waste it. But I have seen people with full-time jobs, get work. I have seen people with like 2 kids, get work while they're in school, just because it's all I did was grind. Like, it really was what you make of it. And I've seen people that didn't have to worry about anything. They didn't have to worry about working. They just all had to do was to sit there and draw. And they did that, and they didn't squander their opportunity, and they got work right away. So there's plenty of options out there for someone that wants to be successful. So I'm gonna start brand new here. This wasn't.
So I have a question. Obviously, 2D artists have always been dependent on Photoshop, and most only just stay within Photoshop. If you were to look the last 3-5 years, has there anything been revolutionary in your workflow that you're like, holy crap, this software is gonna really change the world? So obviously there are things like the Oculus and that little 3D drawing tool is like the closest Quill, thing. Which one was it called?
Quill is one.
Quill, yeah, Quill. Yeah. Quill. It's still very niche, of course, but is there anything else besides Photoshop where you're like, holy shit? I mean, here's an example, right? If I'm kind of answering this question for you, though, right? I saw that NVIDIA thing where NVIDIA once in a while gets bored of making like bomb ass cards and like profiting millions. They come out with a tool, and it's like a tool where you kind of just paint colors on a picture, and then it kind of photoshops in, right? All the mountains.
Oh yeah, it's Gao. It's not the famous artist. I forget his name.
Yes, it's very brute force. But like aside from that, I haven't really seen anything within the 2D world that has been, as a tool, made your job that much better, right? Am I correct in this assessment?
Yeah, I don't think there has been anything yet, but I think we're probably due for one. I mean, ZBrush came out when we were in school, 2007, 2006? Yeah. Like, when it came more prevalent. Yeah, so that was a game changer, and it's been almost 10 years now, or been more than 10 years. It's been like 14 years since we've had something like of that magnitude where it's changed the game like that much. So we're probably overdue for something like that. I mean, Unreal 3 came out too, like while we were in school as well. There's a lot of things that came out.
Unreal 3. It takes me back.
Is that Unreal 3?
No, yeah.
That's Unreal 3. Yeah.
My graduation reel was Unreal 3 until I saw that Unreal 4 was coming out. Or no, it was Unreal 2 until I saw that Unreal 3 came out right at the
Didn't you get in trouble for that? Like, you could. They were like, "How do you have a copy of this?"
I bought Gears of War for PC, and then my whole demo reel was stuff from Unreal that I made in Gears of War.
They packaged it.
Yeah, I had like 3 weeks to pull that off, but I was like, my reel's gonna be old as soon as I graduate.
Yeah, what was their level design professor? What was his name?
Andy Clayton.
Yeah. Clayton.
Dominguez.
Oh, Dominguez.
You had Carlos Dominguez.
I had Pablo, Carlos Dominguez, yeah.
I think Andy Clayton was our original level design.
I had both, actually.
Yeah, so Andy Clayton would like tell us stories about how his student would finally work on Unreal 3 at the early stages, and he was a good student enough to kind of provide him a ripped copy.
Oh, yeah.
And he was working out of it.
Yeah,
remember
that's right. Andy Clayton gave me my first little
glimpse.
I got like a downloadable Unreal 3 from him, right? Someone that he knew, and Andy turned his back when I grabbed it. Andy wasn't the one that gave it to me to save him, because we've said his
yeah, that's fine, man. Unreal's free now. It's not like Epic is gonna be like,
damn, dude, you can't be dry.
Well, if anything, Andy Clayton gave him the business model 30 years ahead of their time, right? They're all about giving it free.
Andy invited me into a room where I noticed
Mr. Clayton. Mr. Clayton invited
Unreal 3 files were
just dropping his name all over the place. He's fine as free now.
Huntington Beach Bank. Like, dude, stop saying
right in Santa Ana.
Right in Santa Ana. License plate number.
Yeah.
I mean, what you said, Brandon, I think goes to show, like, you were using a program and it became obsolete, like right away. So you had to adapt and learn something new. Yeah. And so that just goes to show kind of what I'm talking about is that you have to literally adapt to survive. Like, if the people that don't adapt, people that go, I don't want to learn a new program. As soon as that happens, like, you're kind of dead in the water. Like, you really don't have much else to kind of give. If you're not willing to kind of put in the work and learn something new. But more importantly too is that the fundamentals never change, is that the tools will always change. Fundamentals don't change. How you think about design, how you approach design, those things will always kind of stay the same for the most part. So that's why it's just how you express yourself with that tool that changes. And so I think that's where some people get really caught up, I think, where they go, oh, what program was that? Or, oh, what brush is that? And it's like, the brushes will change, man. Like, that will change. The program will change. But what doesn't change, it's like perspective, design, your overall like thought process, like how you like to think about things. All those things don't change. And so you just learn to kind of take those fundamental ideas and just apply them to a different tool or a different button, if that makes sense. And so that's why I'm a very big proponent of, like, I don't really worry about the tool that much. But to answer your question, has anything kind of changed my life? Not really. I would say the thing that I recently purchased, and I'm still waiting on it to get here, is the Oculus Quest. I was over at Anthony Jones's house, and he showed it to me, and I was definitely sold on it right away. Because I actually don't like VR. I think it's kind of dumb. But then, like, when I saw what he was doing in it, and when I actually tried it on for the first time, I was like, all right, I see where this is going, and I'm actually like for it.
I promise it's gonna be great.
Yeah, and so like
you can feel it all over your body, right? Like, it's like, what?
Yeah, that stuff will give me a headache too when I use it. But like, for some reason, when I use the Quest or whatever, like, I was like, dude, this feels super intuitive. And already I was in there kind of like doing stuff, and I was like, oh, dude, like, I get it now. Like, I'm gonna buy this and like mess with it. Yeah. And I think maybe too, because it's probably nostalgic, it probably gives me the feeling of when I first used Photoshop. And I haven't had that like nostalgia of like almost like being in a new relationship where like everything is new and kind of fun. I haven't had that yet in a minute, and so I'm wondering if this program can kind of scratch.
Is it the Quill you're talking about, or another program?
He's just saying him using Oculus Quest and seeing.
I'm not sure which one it is. I'd have to ask AJ. He was just showing me like these programs that he was using in video games that he was playing in them.
Yeah, I'm quite sure it was the Quest. If I know him,
it was cool, man.
Yeah, being untethered.
There's no wire too.
Yeah, the untethered part is a huge sell point for a lot of consumers. You don't have to have a high power PC. Like, Facebook, among very little things, did that call correctly, because they upset a lot of their high execs who are focusing on the next biggest powered VR set. For them to take a step back, just like make it consumer friendly, was a huge compliment for the VR industry to grow. And like you, man, yeah, I'm one of the people that when you instantly put on VR headset, I love it. As an environment artist, it was great to kind of, well, I guess you can relate, right? Being able to walk around environment, and environment being like the focal point of the experience has been a joy for me to witness, because usually it's like characters up front. Well, these AJs kind of like pimping it.
I'll say this, like, environment artist, designer aside, I just think the experience of, air quotes, literally being in a new game space, right, versus sitting on the same couch holding the same controller and just seeing on a flat screen TV a new game space, the immersion opportunities are completely different. So even if I'm playing something that's low fidelity, I have a much bigger appreciation for it when I'm like standing in it and looking around than if I'm just like scrolling my mouse or moving my thumb pad controller. So I love VR. I hope it just gets better, and I hope that this time it'll stay. So I want Quest to work out. I want Vive to work out, and I want both of them to keep competing and making VR better and better.
Facebook will make it sell. Well, we do have a question from Twitch, and if any of you want to talk to Kalen.
So segueing back into like job opportunities, we have a question from Brand BOT. It is it necessary to have super unique style to get work? And then like a follow-up, actually kind of funny, but follow-up, he says, besides kids taking your jobs, are robots, aka AI, thinning your job opportunities as well? So is it necessary to have a super unique style? And what are your concerns with AI simplifying your work to make less job opportunities?
Okay, I think I'll answer the robot question first. I think when people that to go back to what Brandon was talking about, that program where like you paint like little shapes and it fills everything in. I don't think so. I don't think that it will take our jobs. I think it will just free us up to do other creative things, and it will make things faster for us.
Yeah.
And so I think if anything, people are because I've still seen bad paintings in that program. And so I think what it really shows is that like if you don't know composition, if you don't know design, if you don't know like lighting and color, when you give someone a program like that where it's like, oh well, we'll paint the tree for you, or we'll paint the cloud for you, just tell us where you want it, right? Like they go okay, and then they do it, and they're like, well, it still looks like ass, and then all of a sudden, someone that doesn't doing like they have an eye for what looks good, and they go, oh, well, I want it right there. And so I just feel like that kind of stuff, when you give someone that kind of power, it really kind of amplifies how much someone doesn't know. It's almost like you're giving like a regular person like the body of like an NBA player, and they're like, all right, go play in like an NBA game, and all of a sudden like yeah, like a go be LeBron, right? They're fumbling around, they don't know what they're doing, right? It's because yeah, like we gave you the tools to dunk, but like now you got to understand like actual defensive strategies, how to move off the ball, like you know what I mean? It's like it doesn't necessarily make you a better person. It only kind of enhances what's already there, in my opinion. So there's a lot of people that they start painting and they're like, well, why doesn't this look good? And it's like, well, it's because you're still kind of ignoring the fundamentals. Like you're still not focusing on what's important here. You're just focusing on like the tool, as opposed to like, it's like people that like when I play soccer, they go, oh, what cleats are you using? What's this, you know? And I'm like, the cleat's not going to make you better. Like if you don't know how to do these things, it's not going to solve your issues. You know what I mean? So again, things will always evolve. So I don't think in my particular until like robots can like really like quantitably like understand like design theory and like what makes like until a robot makes like Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, like I'm not worried, because you need someone like Alberto Miyago that has that kind of vision to kind of like push the boundaries of what things can look visually, as opposed to like someone just like rendering something out. So I think until like robots make something like that, if someone does that, I'm going into real estate. Like once that happens, like I'm out. You're in real estate, you want to buy a house from me, like I'll see you there. But until then, I'm not too worried about it. And the second question about, do you need to have a bomb portfolio or a very unique portfolio? I think it's about what you're trying to do, where you're trying to fit in. So like, you know, if you're trying to fit at a certain studio, you want a portfolio that's good, but also can kind of, it seems relatable, that someone can understand exactly where your skills will fit in. And so that's important too. Like someone wants to look at your work and go, okay, like I know if I hire this person right now, they can do the work that I need them to do, because I'm seeing it in their portfolio, as opposed to doing something super crazy out of this world, like kind of random almost. Someone could go, well, it's good quality work, but it's really creative and it's really interesting. I also know how we can use it. So I think the question is like, your quality should always be there, but my question is just like, where is your use? Like, how useful are you? And I think that's what we all want to feel at the end of the day, is we want to feel useful. We want someone to say, hey, you know, Brandon or Larry, like we have this idea for this thing. You know, what do you think? You know, like, can you show us the way? Can you show us like what you think or how this thing should look? You know, we value your opinion. We need to use your brain in order to figure this visual problem out, right? Just like they go to Brandon or go to Larry and they go, hey, this is part in the level that, you know, isn't really working. You know, what do you think we should do? That's Larry being useful, right? We hire him because we know that we can use his expertise for that reason. Same thing with Brandon. If we say, hey, this environment isn't looking good, you know, what do you think we should do, right? He's useful. So I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, how can I be a useful member to my team? And so when you start thinking of it that way, I think you'll know right away whether your work can help a team, because again, a concept artist's job at the end of the day is to kind of help push the visuals forward and help your team achieve the final look, you know, which is usually in 3D.
No, that definitely makes sense.
Good question.
Because if you guys ask me an environment question and I point you to the Chinese guy that I'm outsourcing it to, that's a problem.
Exactly. Like, even like, you know, I worked for companies that had outsourcers, but even then, like, they still had to defer to me because they don't know the whole on vision. You know what I mean? So like, they're good to do stuff that like you don't want to be doing anyway. You know what I mean? Like that's what outsourcing is good for. That's what robots are good for. Robots are good for like planting trees, like in a scene. Like I don't want to plant trees in a scene. Like a robot can do that. But in terms of the overall scene and how it should look, how it should feel, well then yeah, like I totally want to like, you know, work on that and get the overall look and feel. Not like, hey, I need to put every single rock or put every single window on this building. It's like a robot can do that for me. So now I can focus on like the more important stuff in the scene.
No, that's very true.
So until they like create something.
Yeah, I mean, it forces you to be to build up your skill set, right? Obviously, when I crossed those bridges and the toll roads was replaced by robots, basically. Yes, I mean, on all industries they kind of go through that little changeover, but you got to question yourself, like your quality of life has to improve, right? If your thing is that repeatable and is able to kind of be outsourced, you got to ask yourself, what are you doing to make yourself valuable to society? And if it is forced on you, then you just been kind of dormant this whole time, and it's not very good for your industry, but also to yourself. And the same way, if we can outsource any of the work like prop art or anything, then it does force you to be more creative, to kind of step up your game so that you can earn that position in your company and be valued. So anybody that opposes automation, in my opinion, needs to take a step back and just really evolve, because it's never going to be the case where you fight back. It's like, don't use these robots or outsourcing that produces the same results as me, right? It has to be, all right, you can use it, but this is where it's missing. And this is how I can bring my value to the table and be able to have a negotiation here. And at least like when it comes to that state, you know, you don't really have to say much. It's like, I know why I'm valuable and this is why. So I think a lot of people forget that. Yeah, I think people, yes, he can paint as good as me and cheaper, but this is why you should still hire me. No, that's not a good argument. No one's going to look at that seriously. So people need to really
like if I look at Brandon, like I would look at him in terms of his expertise and how, and that's what robots can't do, is like robots don't really have feelings, right? They don't know, right? Like, why did you put something here? Well, because it gives a certain feel that I think the player will adapt to, right? They can't really quantify that quite yet. A lot of stuff that I paint, that I do, is based on feeling, based on emotion, based on things that I've experienced. I try to convey that in my work. And until a robot can do that, I don't think there's any necessarily value in it. I mean, it can value doing the small things, but if I hire someone like Brennan or Larry, I'm hiring them for the bigger picture, right? Like I need them to kind of see and understand, like, hey, this is what I want to achieve. How do we get there? And maybe robots are a part of that, but he still has to be kind of like, he still has to figure out the overall strategy, right? It's like you're less in the trenches, and now you're more like a coach, right? Now you're more like a manager, and you're kind of overseeing things. Now you get to focus on the bigger details, as opposed to like kind of the small details. And it should save you time. Now you can do things faster.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's all I've seen.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's like why artists like. Exactly. Like artists have so many tools right now. We have photo bashing, we have 3D render warehouses, right? Those are all made by pretty much technically robots, right? They're made by outsourcers. I use them all the time. Now, why do I use photos? Why do I use these pre-rendered assets? Why do I use these models? Well, it's because it makes it faster. Now I can put these in there. I can drag and drop. I can paint over it, and now I can focus on the more important stuff in the scene, right? Yeah. Which is conveying a certain idea to my art director. Yeah. So like now I don't have to paint those things, and now I can focus on the more important stuff. Does it mean my job is obsolete? No, because again, I can give students all the same photos that I have, all my photo packs, all my reference, all my brushes, but $10 they're not going to draw what I draw, right? And so that's where you have to be. That's where your overall expertise and skill. That's where experience comes in, and experience something that like you can't always quantify. It's not always X's and O's sometimes.
Yeah. I love your NBA basketball example. I'm going to use that myself. Like, you think you just because you get LeBron's body, you automatically, you know?
It's very true. It's like you can watch what Steph Curry. I mean, I can watch Steph Curry shoot 3-pointers all day in the NBA Finals. If I go to the basketball court right now, I'm not hitting a 3-pointer. Like, I wouldn't hit a 3-pointer from my depending on it. But I've watched the guy do it a billion times, right? Like, so why can't I do it? Well, it takes practice. It takes a lot of skill, a lot of training. And it's like, like I wish I could be like 6'7", like Brandon, like Larry is. Doesn't mean I'm going to be able to like catch a football or something. Like, there's no guarantee that I'm going to know how to like use it to my advantage. And so it's a really interesting thing of like really understanding how to like utilize your skills. And some people, again, they worry too much about the program. And it happens a lot in my classes too. They go, oh, you want to use 3D? And I go, okay, use 3D. And I go, take like 5 different shapes and make composition. They do something that's crappy, and I'm like, that was like the easiest thing. Or what I do is I give them Legos. I have like a Lego set in my room. I give them Legos, and then they all like build something out of Legos. And some people build some really cool shit. Some people build some really whack stuff. And it's like, what's the difference? Like, you guys all have the same pieces. So what changed here? And a lot of it is fundamentals. It's like not knowing design, not knowing proportion, and it gets really, really exposed. So that's why I feel like once VR comes out, and there's probably like a program that allows you to say like build trees or like build rabbits or like build horses and build deer and build a building, it's not going to change anything because people that are really good at like creating worlds and like creating an immersive experience will just excel because they're going to be always better than the person that's just like putting stuff randomly.
So my last question for you and Kalen is I'm going to start calling this like the master's master, where obviously Kalen, you're dope, dude. We've been following your art for over a decade now, and I love what you do. But what I want to know is, like, are there 1 or 2 artists that you yourself still consider, like, man, but this guy or this girl, like, super dope. This is somebody who, like, I get inspiration from in a different way. Maybe they don't even do the same type of art, right? Like, oh, this is a costume designer or this is a character artist, but just the way that they, do what they do inspires me to do what I do. So who's the master's master?
Who's the master's master? That's definitely a good question. I would still say close friends. Like, as cheesy as it sounds, what you guys do with your work, Larry, and your work, Brandon. I always get inspired by close friends, just because it feels more tangible, I guess. Like, in my mind, I go, oh, if Brandon can do that shit, I can do that. Because, like, I know Brandon. Like, I see him in person.
No
Wish.
Different.
He's a normal guy.
That's what I say to you.
But like in my head, I'm thinking like it seems a lot more tangible and possible to do it versus like if Kobe Bryant does something, right? I'm like, I'm never gonna do shit, right? But if you do it and I see you and I'm like, hey, like it's a big thing that I talk about too is like success is very, very hard when you don't see it. That's why family is like a really, really important thing, and that's why it's good to have representation for like minorities and stuff like that. I think I've talked about it before, but like when people talk about why is it hard for like minorities to get in certain industries and stuff like that, it's hard when you don't see success around you all the time, right? I don't have a brother that did art. So for me, when I was doing art, I looked at students, I looked at teachers, but I didn't have anyone close to kind of look at as like a pedestal to kind of give me like to show me the way of something like that. Now my brother's in the military, and we come from a family of military aunts, uncles, grandfathers. We're all in the military, all did very, very well. He has that he can look at, to kind of as inspiration, because he can see success because he's seeing it in front of him every day. When you're an artist and you don't see other artists that look like you that are doing amazing things, it's kind of hard to kind of internalize that success a little bit. And so you can't visualize it as much. That's why I think representation is important for women, minorities, that kind of stuff. You want to see other people doing amazing things. And I'm not sure what it is psychologically, but it kind of empowers you to think like, oh, I'm seeing success, I can do it. And so I think that's what that correlation there is that if I see someone that I'm close to doing an amazing thing, I go, well, damn, he did it. So I guess it is possible. So why can't I do it? So I find personally that when I look at close friends doing amazing things. Like Anthony Jones is a good example too. He just won the art challenge thing in Japan.
I love that.
Art competition. He won that. And that's like really hard to do. And so now I'm like, damn, like I could possibly win that. Yeah. Probably not. But like in my head, I think I could. So it's like it gives you that confidence a little bit, I think.
I guess if I could kind of paraphrase is the door to going down that path is a lot more accessible than you would have thought if you saw someone who already was inaccessible to where you were going through that door, right? So like you said with Kobe Bryant, oh yeah, Kobe Bryant did X, Y, and Z. Yeah, because he has a lot more access. There's a lot more, that I would see. I don't have Kobe Bryant level access to anything on this planet, right? But like Brandon Pham, I went to school with that guy. We came from a similar situation. He took his coins and did a thing, and it worked out. Maybe I can do it too, because maybe you feel like the accessibility is a lot closer, right? Is that a good way to?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's totally wise. So I think when people kind of complain about why is it so important to highlight this kind of stuff and whatnot, I think it's because it's hard to picture success and to picture that you can have something better for yourself in this life when you're constantly kind of not seeing that, you know what I mean? Like it was hard to me to picture that kind of stuff. Like I don't come from a family of artists. I don't come from a family of relatively successful parents in a way. Like my dad's successful as a car salesman, and my mother is a very good janitor, but nothing like crazy, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's very, very hard to kind of visualize, hey, I could be the best artist around if I put my work to it, put my mind to it. And again, that I think made it a little bit easier because I began to see close friends like Edgar and Nino and Mio and all these guys start to do like really amazing things. Daniel McGowan, Jason Hill, all these guys were all like killing it in the industry. So now I'm like, shit. Yeah, they went to the same school. Like, what am I doing, right? And so it's like I just need to buckle down and put my work in. And so I think people like that, even my wife that does amazing things, even though it's a completely different industry, I see what she's able to accomplish just by putting her mind to something. So I tend to look at more the smaller artists that are my close friends that have made it out of school, that have made it into positions of power or worked on cool projects versus like a crazy artist that I've never met in my entire life. I tend to find more inspiration in people that I know personally.
I'm really excited that you have not only a tight group of friends that have all kind of come up and done the same thing together, but showing proof that kind of scenario of put around you the type of successful people that you yourself want to be around, like have that close circle of success is way better than not, right? I love group ambition, so to speak. So I will say this, Kalen, we've been doing this for about an hour now, man. So we really want to thank you for, joining in and doing a live seminar for the Game School Online audience. Obviously, we have nothing but respect for you and what you do. Like me specifically, if I spend the rest of my life drawing and get half as good as you are, I'll consider that time well spent, man. I really appreciate the art that I see you do. It's always amazing.
Well, I can't dunk, so it's all good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I still shout out, I think the day where I was like, God damn, Kalen, he did like a Castle Crashers thing. And I was like, fuck, this is like this. I would buy this and put it on my wall. And I was like, all right. I was like, Kalen, you're the man, dude. And that's a long time ago. So I know you've gotten so much better and done so much more. But all kudos aside, man, I really appreciate you, brother. So thank you for doing this with us. And anybody out there wants to get in touch with Kalen, he does streams. He's on Facebook. He's on YouTube. I've seen him literally everywhere where we've done something. He's always doing stuff with us. So the relationship is strong. Kalen, if there's one last thing you want to say to the audience to how they can support you further, please let them know now.
I do have a Gumroad where I do release some tutorials, probably the only thing I can think of. Haven't been very active on it lately, but I do plan on getting back into it at some point in time. Nice. I can find the link.
He just unlinked. He'll be coming back. Yeah. I think he accidentally exited.
Yeah, I'll say this on his behalf. It's actually a good Gumroad. The last time I checked, there was about, I think, 13 different little classes, some of them free, like the Photoshop Basics was free. He has a brush pack on there. He's got a lot of environment studies on shape. So there's some really cool stuff that he does there.
Yeah.
If you're interested in Photoshop painting specifically for background environment design, going to his Gumroad page, there's a lot of good content there.
Yes, and if you're watching us live right now, we'll provide the link in the Twitch before we leave. He's about to join back.
Yeah. I think if you Google like Kalen Chock Gumroad,
you'll find it in Kalen Chock Gumroad. But also, we'll provide the links underneath.
Yeah.
This guy.
That's my bad. I was on accident. That's my bad. But yeah, just gumroad.com/K04SK. But yeah, just please listen to Larry and Brandon. Whatever those guys do, they know what they're doing. They have a lot of experience, and everything they do is for the good of the community, and they're good people. So yeah, if I'm a student and I'm getting in this industry and they have something to say about it, I would listen to those guys. That's why I'm here. So whatever they say, I want to hear what it is and take it seriously.
We send that right back to you, man. I still tell people suck is not a style. And every time I say that, this guy right here, giving it to him.
That's
you gotta put that under your branding, man.
Yeah.
That's perfect, man. Thanks again for hanging out with us. Anytime, we welcome you. We love watching you paint and talk. I think you're one of the best people to learn from, man. You have a natural ability to kind of teach and inspire. So, Kalen, thanks again.
Right.
We'll see you soon in your mansion up in San Francisco.
Yeah. I wish.
If you got a Peloton bike, you're doing great.
You're doing great, dude.
Hey, no, man.
I'm happy for you, man.
A year and a half, all right? I did it the smart way. I didn't do that.
Even still.
That is winning, dude.
Yeah, man.
Anytime I want something that's expensive, I save for it. Jacqueline keeps me pretty grounded financially. She's like, all right.
Only Tim Ferriss and a certain amount of people I know has a Peloton bike.
Shout out to Jack,
shout out
man,
to
by
you,
the way.
Yeah.
She's
shout
awesome.
out to Jaggy.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right.
Yeah. Come visit anytime,
guys.
man. I'll see you at the SoCal.
All right. See you guys soon.
Peace.
There we have it. Hope you learned something.
Oh, Larry's saying something.
No, I was just, ending it saying.
All right. Well, do we have a signature that we sign off with Gamesco Online?
Not that I know of. I haven't done a sign off for Gamesco Online, but seriously, shout out to Kalen for doing this. Again, if you're watching this right now, it's awesome that we're going to be doing this once a week to make sure that you guys always get free content to help learn about game development. That's what we want to do with Gamesco Online is we want to promote and empower people to take action, learn cool things, be exposed to the colleagues that we have who can show you an hour at a time how to take your skills up to the next level.
Right. Every Thursday, join us live on twitch.tv/blue_champs. You can also find us on youtube.com/Gamesco Online if you want to see this free as well. But if you become a member, you will see it immediately after we broadcast live. And that is another way to support us and keep this going because these experts don't come cheap, man. They're volunteering their time, but that's all we can give them is a good thanks. So we would love to keep promoting the platform and having these awesome people come on and give you guys awesome education. So see you guys around.